Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. I've got to tell you guys, this is a video I've been pretty excited to make. And as I've been preparing for it and thinking of it, I'm thinking of different ways. And here's what I've come up with. I think the best way to sort of summarize this knife and really this video discussion is this is the high-end titanium frame lock for guys on a budget. Okay, you know, if you love the ZTs and if you love the nice Kaisers and the Wee knives and all the different really nice high-end titanium frame locks that are out there, and you love the action and the materials you get all of that. This scratches all of those itches, but it costs less than a pair of two. And so you're getting something that to me is pretty darn impressive. Not only for a value knife, okay, not only for a cheaper titanium frame lock, but just as a high-end titanium frame lock, this is a really nice knife. Okay, so there's a lot of winning here. Now, the first thing that we have to deal with is the one thing that I wish were different, and that is the size. This knife is a little smaller than I like. If this was 8 or 8.5 inches, my mind would be like, I would just be saying, sell all your knives and just buy this and forget about it. We can stop knife collecting now. It is really, really exceptional as it stands, but if this were a little bit bigger, I would be even more in love with it. So let's go ahead and get to the actual size and weight. I wish it was 8.5 inches, but it's not. It's 7 11/16 overall, 3 and just under 3/8. It's a little more than 5/16, but it's not quite 3/8 either. So right around, you know, that ballpark for the blade length, 4 5/8 on the handle. And it weighs in at a moderately hefty for its size, although not horrible, 4.2 ounces. Now, that means that this carries very comfortably. 4 ounces is really not a big deal. And so this knife in pocket rides really, really well. As an EDC folder, it's fantastic. Now, I know a number of you watching will prefer those smaller sizes. And so for you, that size issue won't be a thing. For me, just let me add before we leave off of size and weight. If someone from Ferrum Forge is watching, if someone from Massdrop is watching, please make me this knife in, you know, 8 to 8.5 inches. And, you know, my knife collection will just be complete. It'll be just the most perfect knife imaginable. Anyway, let's get back to our discussion. Moving on to the blade. I'm not going to harp on size anymore, but you can guess I would like to see this blade a little bit bigger. But as it stands, we have S35VN drop point blade with this nice high flat grind, satin finish. It's 22 thousandths behind the edge, so fairly thin. It's 160 thousandths stock. And the way that this is ground, you know, it's high enough and the blade is wide enough that despite the fact that this is a fairly stout blade, that it's fairly thick and robust and certainly confidence inspiring, it still slices really, really well. And you guys know, I feel like, again, I harp on this all the time. I like balance, and this knife is extremely well balanced. It is one of those knives that, you know, it has very, very few contenders where I would feel like their blade is equally as well done. One would be the Inkosi. We've talked about the Inkosi before and what I love, how I love this blade, because it strikes such a perfect balance between being, you know, strong and reliable and still being a nice cutter. The only other knife that I have here, there are others, but you know, I think of knives like the American Lawman, where again, it's a nice heavy blade. You know, it's very confidence inspiring, but it's nice and thin and still slices exceptionally well. Outside of that, really the other knife that's not super comparable, but I have said similar things about it, would be the Formex, where that's a huge heavy duty knife, okay? And that's in a different class than this, but again, it slices well. This isn't to that extent, but it's still a great, great balance. So in terms of usefulness as an EDC tool and confidence in knowing that you're going to be able to get a lot of stuff done with this, and it's going to be stable and it's not going to want to break on you and it's going to hold an edge. You know, this is a fantastic blade. All right, allow me this one more thing. I do wish it were just a little longer. Okay, so I promise I won't bring up size again until I get to comparisons. Actually, I will bring it up one more time, and that is in handle real estate. But let's move on now to the action. The blade here is fantastic. Total win. And the action is no slouch either. So we've got a titanium frame lock here, stainless steel lock bar insert, pretty much par for the course these days. The detent is really nice and snappy. It is drop shut for sure. So really, really dialed in action on this knife. Absolutely enjoyable to sort of manipulate and play with and all that. And so there are a couple quick things that I feel like they've really, really nailed here. The first one is one I want to show you, and I'm just going to try to, let's see if I can get you to, there you go. So the relief cut is the first thing I want to focus on for a second. The way Ferrum Forge does their relief cuts and the way that this knife has been done is to actually mill out, hold on if I can get that, mill out a pocket in here. So if this here is actually like a little wall. Back behind there, there's actually a bit of a deeper cut. And it's hard to kind of show it on camera, but it's great because it creates, sort of a bit of an I-beam, right? It creates kind of this shape. Instead of just a flat relief cut, you end up with a bit of a contour in there, which adds to the strength and stability of the lock. And I've got to say, that is a huge win as far as I'm concerned. The lock bar tension is a little stiff, but it's not at all uncomfortable. And I kind of like a slightly stiffer lock bar tension. And Ferrum Forge is definitely known to have that. So that's the first thing that I've got to touch on here. The other thing that I'm not going to be able to show you is the fact that in here, there are bearing races that are really, really nice, thick, heavy-duty hunks of steel. And again, that is a huge win. And it's a small detail, but it's one that seems so obvious that really all knife companies should just be using a thicker, heavier bearing race. They have done that on here, and it's really, really nice to see. I have taken apart my Buck as well. That's the other Ferrum Forge collab that I have. And it has a fairly thick, heavy bearing race, which it just means longevity and thoughtfulness. And, it's really, really well done. And it just shows that they were thinking about, this knife lasting and being reliable and durable. And I've got to give a lot of credit for that. Okay, so that kind of falls under handle construction. Basically, the action is fantastic. So let's move on to handle construction. This, of course, is the milled handle. There is just a plain titanium one available. This is also available in colors. So you can do this pattern or just the plain in either blue or bronze. I think that's it. Now, I'm not sure. This is an ongoing model that's going to be available. So you may see more colors and more mill patterns come out over time. Don't know about that. But this, so those are the available patterns, and I do find it very, very attractive. This is just, to me, it's just dressed up enough that it makes the knife visually interesting. In terms of what they've used here, we've got thick slabs of titanium with a titanium backspacer. The lanyard hole has been integrated into the knife. Single position pocket clip. That pocket clip is very small and very slim, but it does go in and out of pocket nicely. You can see, I think you can see, hold on, let's flip this way and see if I can show you this side. There is no milling on this knife, which is one of the things that contributes to that weight. And honestly, at 4.2 ounces, that's totally fine, right? Yeah, they could shave off a little bit of weight there, but it's not too heavy anyway, so it doesn't really, really matter. So very well built, great fit and finish. Everything fits together nicely. I've had this knife apart a couple of times, and in fact, I will apologize, I just didn't take pictures. Normally when I take a knife apart, especially one that I'm planning to do a review on, I take a couple of pictures so I can show you guys. I just didn't get to it with this one, so you're gonna have to take my word for it that they have done a really good job and everything fits together quite nicely. In terms of ergonomics, couple things I got to say here. One, I love finger choils. I like that ability to choke up and do some more detailed work. This one is not the most comfortable, but it does work. In hand, normally in sort of a saber grip, it doesn't have all of the handle real estate I would wish for, but it's not terrible, okay? So I really can't complain that much. Again, though, I've got to bring up, if this were just a little bit bigger. Now, even having said that, this is quite hand-filling and quite comfortable for a small knife. Generally speaking, my complaints about smaller knives is they just aren't hand-filling enough that I can feel like, I can get a lot of work done or they're very comfortable. This one doesn't have that problem. So I've got to give them some credit for that. It is comfortable in hand, and they do have the choil, both of which I think are really, really nice. So let's think of some comparisons. And I've got to say, starting off here, that I think this knife is a modern classic. Okay, this is one of those knives that if I were to go back and remake my video about knives everyone should try, this would be a solid contender on that list. All right, I would put this in the same category as some of the knives that have just that reputation for being nearly perfect. You know, I think of the Kaiser T1, I think of the American Lawman, which I do have here. I think of the Para 2, of course, the knife that everyone feels like is, you know, sort of the most perfect knife that's out there. Number of other knives kind of go on this list. If you start thinking about what are the nicest EDC knives, you know, the Benchmade 940, I would include the one version of the Griptilian or another. The Benchmade Freak I actually like better than the Griptilian. You know, these are knives that just have done just about everything right. Again, Chris Reeve, same kind of deal. I absolutely would contend that this knife absolutely deserves a place on that list. If you're into knives at all, if you're interested in nice folders, you really need to try one of these. It is truly exceptional. And for me to say that about a knife that I really feel like is a bit small for me, you know, I think that says something about how much I enjoy it. I've got to put in a couple of more comparisons here because, well, I wanted to try and give you some other great EDC knives. There are some other, you know, Kaiser has some comparable knives out there. Riot, this one I'm bringing in mostly because it's one of my favorite knives. And, you know, I love everything about this. And it's just a little bit more refined than this one, but not very much. Okay. And that the point is to show you that, you know, this knife for twice as much money is not offering you very much more. And so the value on this is just off the charts. Next knife I want to show you is one that really doesn't belong in this video, but I do think it shares some similar sort of philosophy with this knife. This is, you know, of course, the Curtis F3, really heavy duty, really overbuilt knife that still is supposed to function well as a knife. This one is probably a little more balanced, okay, leans a little bit to the lighter end of the scale, where this is, you know, sort of overbuilt and heavy duty. But both of these pull off being pretty heavily built and having heavy duty components while still being really, really highly functional. Last knife that I want to share with you guys, and that is the other Ferrum Forge collab that I have. This is the Buck. Now, this knife is a little bit larger, a little longer overall, I believe. I don't know, maybe I'm going to have to eat my words on that one. They're very, very close, in fact. And I like this knife an awful lot. I enjoy it a lot. It's a little more out there, okay, than the Crux. And honestly, if I was going to recommend one or the other, I would absolutely have to recommend this one. I just feel like the size and shape and blade shape and ergonomics on this knife are going to be more broadly appealing and are more, you know, well balanced to be just the knife that's going to appeal to almost everyone, okay? But the fact that I have the two of these does allow me to say that, you know, I've had good experiences, right? There's a level of consistency here. And there were initially some complaints about some of these, but it seems like all the kinks are worked out and you can buy with an awful lot of confidence with these knives. So overall, guys, my conclusion on this knife is if you want a high-end knife that delivers all the features and all the materials that you want and all that stuff that really gets you excited about high-end folders, high-end frame locks, I guess, this does that without question. The big difference between this and like any ZT or most Kaisers or all kinds of competitors out there is it costs like 125 bucks. Like it's less than a paramilitary 2. And so in that regard, it is fantastic. Now, I know maybe if they were to give in to my desires for a larger knife, they'd have to charge a little bit more for it, but I would happily pay, you know, 150 bucks or something for a slightly larger version. This is a great knife, guys. Highly, highly recommended. And this is one that I've just enjoyed a ton. And I'm sure that virtually anyone who's interested in knives, right? This is not one of my typical overbuilt knives where it's going to be a Kevin knife. I think this is a knife that everyone is going to love, that just checks all the boxes and does it for an extremely attractive price point. So there you go, guys. Ferrum Forge Crux. Total win. One of the best knives that I have recently had come across my table. I'm so impressed with this knife in so many ways, and I can't say enough about it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you. Oh, by the way, I better add, this is not a knife that's going to go away. As far as I know, this is meant to be sort of a permanently available production knife from Massdrop. So if you watch this and want one, even if there's none available at the moment, it seems that they will just keep making, runs of these. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.